for our speaker of the day, please. I think the first task of the day is obviously to introduce the author. I try to be as brief as possible. Vikram is a trained Carnatic vocalist. In fact, I should correct it. It is Dr. Vikram Sampath. He has a doctorate in history and music from the University of Queensland in Australia. He's an engineer, he's a mathematician, he's an MBA, it's a pretty long list of qualifications. He's a senior research fellow at the Nehru National Museum, Delhi, and he's a fellow at the Wissenschaft Institute of Advanced Study in Berlin. And he has the credit for establishing the Archive of Indian Music. This is India's first digital sound archive for vintage recordings specifically. He has written several books. The first one was Splendors of Royal Mysore. It's the story of the Wodeyar family. The second one was Gauhar Jaan, which we are going to talk about today. And the third was The Voice of the Veena, S. Balchandra, which was a biography again. And the latest book which he wrote last year was Savarkar, Echoes from a Lost Past. He has had several recognitions, including the Sahitya Akademi Award's first Yuva Puraskar for English literature, International Award for Excellence in Historical Research, and so on and so forth. He is also a part of several government committees and continues to be on one of the committees of the Indian government as on date. He also represents India at UNESCO, and he is the founder director of the Bangalore Big Fest. He has immersed himself to such an extent that when we hear his talk today and his presentation, I think you will realize that he presents literally a fly on the wall observation of Gauhar Jaan, who was, we are talking 100 years ago. But he has managed to research it so well, he has managed to do so well with it, in my opinion, that it's almost as if he was physically present over there. So many humane aspects of the subject have been covered. I think he has been empathetic, he has not been judgmental, and I could go on and on. However, I close this introduction with this line using his own words. What, after all, is that art which remains static and does not mold itself in accordance with the popular sentiment? I have the privilege to ask Vikram to take over now with his presentation. Thank you.
So very good evening, everyone. It's indeed a great pleasure, a privilege to be here at the Vidarbha Literature Festival, and quite ironically, I mean, talking about a vocalist, and both me and the moderator have a bad throat. So pardon me while I keep sipping water in the middle, because it's been an unending chain of a lot of literature festivals and talking. I remember speaking at this very venue at the Chitnavi Center a couple of months back about my latest book on Veer Savarkar. So when Vidarbha Literature Festival asked me to speak again, I said, I'm really tired of speaking about this book. So I'd rather go to something which has been my primary passion, my muse, which is classical music. And this book and this lady, in a way, changed the course of my life, and we can probably discuss that more when we have the discussion. But I thought a little brief about the life and times of this amazing musician, vocalist of the early 20th century, with also some of the clippings so that you don't get bored of my monologue. You can actually hear the first voice of India, which was commercially recorded on the gramophone in 1902 when recording technology came to India, Madam Gauhar Jaan, as she was called. Gauhar Jaan was born in Azamgarh in present-day Uttar Pradesh on 26th of June 1873, and a fascinating lineage, born of a Hindu grandmother, a British grandfather, an Armenian Christian father. She was actually baptized in Allahabad as Eileen Angelina Yuva, and this was her mother, who was Victoria Hennings. The parents have a bitter divorce, and the mother goes away with one of her Muslim benefactors, and they migrate to Banaras the city of light, the city of music, mirth, a lot of merriment, dance, all of that. And that is where Victoria Hemings converts to Islam. She becomes Badi Malka Jaan, and this little girl who's all of 5 or 6 takes the name of Gauhar Jaan. And there the environment of Banaras gives the mother and daughter the most congenial kind of an atmosphere to hone their innate skills in poetry, in classical music, in dance, and all of that. And they establish themselves as tawayafs in the city. And as Nawab Wajid Ali Shah is exiled to Calcutta, the entire scene of the arts in northern India shifts to that place, and Calcutta becomes the citadel of the performing arts. Though Wajid Ali Shah is in exile in Matia Buruj near Calcutta, his court is bejeweled with some of the greatest names from the world of Indian classical music and dance. And that is where Badi Malka Jaan and Gauhar Jaan established themselves as court musicians. And very soon, and this is the narrow street in Chitpur Lane, which is now called Rabindra Sharani in Calcutta, near the Nakhuda Mosque in Calcutta, where they established themselves. They take a house of their own, and it was later called Gauhar Building. So it was actually named after this woman. Of course, now not a trace of that remains. The whole house is broken down. There's some foreign exchange business going on, some others hawkers and so on, and it's a very, very dilapidated building. Though the locals there know that Gauhar Bai lived here in this house. So in the local, typical Calcutta adda that they have over chai, I think the name of Gauhar Jaan still resonates, and the music that she created 100 years ago. And very soon opportunities came her way, and when she was hardly 15, 16 years old, she gives her first performance in the court of the Darbhanga Raj, Kameshwar Pratap Singh, and that's what launches her into the whole world of classical music, and there is absolutely no looking back after that. So she conquers concert platforms after concert platforms across India, including southern India, Mysore, Madras, etc., where she makes regular appearances. This is a contemporary picture of hers where she's sitting right in the center with all the other tawayafs of the time in performances which used to happen in those days. Now around this time, parallelly, there's another story that is happening, another part of the world in Europe, and that is the discovery of recording. I think mankind has always been fascinated by this phenomenon of, can you actually record your voice and hear it back? And this started in the 1870s with Thomas Alva Edison coming out with his phonograph, and much later the phonograph had its own disadvantages, and this phonograph also caught the interest of people across the world. This is a picture in Hyderabad somewhere around the 1870s, where you used to have these little get-togethers under a tent where everyone would go record their voice and hear it back. Just it was a talking toy, a talking machine, which many children would actually get scared, saying, has somebody gone inside, have we gone inside, and we've been captured and so on. So this, just paying a little penny or so, you could have your voice recorded and hear it back like a hawker would do. But then the commercial potential of this was never realized till the time this man, Emily Berliner, decided that why not make this a commercially viable proposition, and he invented what is known as the gramophone, the circular discs, the 78 RPMs which were made on shellac. Now the cylinders that were there, they were made of wax, whereas this was made of shellac. Now these circular discs would be replicated, whereas a cylinder could not be made copies of. So to make mass copies and sell this, it was much more easier to have the gramophone discs. Now very soon, he also got a company that was incorporated in London, which was his master's voice. Initially the Gramophone and Typewriter Limited was what it was called. And these people started sending out agents across the world to look for native voices, and in what was known as expeditions. Now it almost had a sense of medieval romance to it. In the medieval times you had people who went looking for new lands, Columbus and others. So here these experts were sent to look for new voices to record. Of course they understood nothing of the music of the countries that they went to, but it was plainly for commercial purposes that they were sent. Now there was a lot of resistance to come to India for some reason, and though the company was registered in 1899, it It was only in 1902, after a lot of back and forth between the head office in Calcutta and London, that they finally decided to send an agent to India, an advertisement of that time. And this man, Frederick William Gaisberg, a German technician, he becomes the person who comes to India as the first agent to record Indian voices. Now he's taken to all these different nautch parties and theatres and all of that across Calcutta because they didn't understand anything of Indian music. Now the theatre artist also, I mean, he writes very disparagingly about Indian music. For instance, this is what he writes: I had yet to learn that the Oriental ear was unappreciative of chords and harmonic treatment and only demanded the rhythmic beat of the drum. We entered a new world of musical and artistic values. One had to erase all memories of European opera houses. To hear them sing was nothing short of appalling. So it was almost that he decided that Indian music is so crass, it is not at all worth being recorded. And so most of the theatres that he went to, they used to play these very badly arranged Western operas to him, Romeo and Juliet and all of that, and he was so frustrated, saying, which country have I come to which doesn't even understand anything of musical sensitivities. But all this was going to change when one evening he goes to this soiree in a rich zamindar's house, and he suddenly sees that all the streets around the house are crowded with people who are trying to catch a glimpse of this lady who's coming in a beautiful carriage driven by horses. And she steps out, and she's fair, she has Anglo-Indian descent, and so she sees that she's a very great, marketeer also. She sees Europeans who are there, Gaisberg and others, and she reaches out her hand and, good evening, gentlemen. And this guy suddenly stunned, from those crass nautch girls whom he met in theatre, you finally have someone who's able to talk to them in English. And you have all these people who are hanging around everywhere just to catch a glimpse of her, which gave him the confidence that recording her would be a commercially very viable and sustainable proposition. And she was as he was to discover, very tough businesswoman, and she charged about 3,000 rupees per recording session. In 1902, you can imagine that amount was quite a lot, but then considering her popularity among the masses, Gaisberg and the gramophone company agreed. And so in 1902, Gauhar becomes the subcontinent's first recorded musical artist. In all tribute to her, I think a little bit of those early recordings. The first track, please. This was recorded in 1904 or 05, but Thumri, a small piece of it, I'd like to play now. No, ma'am. Thank you. So that loud announcement, sometimes very flirtatious, someone with, my name is Gauhar Jaan, and all that, she has fun while recording. That announcement becomes her trademark signature, so to say. In fact, when my book came out, it was very much the time of, I think, Karan Johar's film, My Name is Khan. So many people asked me whether it was some kind of a marketing trick that I was naming my book as My Name is Gauhar Jaan, but I thought she used to end her recordings with that announcement. So it was literally like she talking her story through my pen, and so it was only apt that the book was titled so. So there was a technical requirement for this. So though the recording was done in India, in Calcutta, and later in other cities like Bombay and Madras and others, the actual manufacture of these discs was made in Hanover, in Germany. So the master shellac would be recorded here, and it would be shipped all the way back to Germany, and there for the technician there it was an anonymous voice. So they would listen to the entire recording, and at the end of it, identify the artist by this announcement, and then stamp multiple copies on it and with the sticker on it of the name of the artist. And that's why all these artists had to announce their name. Of course, this lady was so flamboyant. She also ye babu dule chand ki banayi hui hai, mera address ye hai. In one of the things she says, you have liked my song. So it's almost like she's not giving the audience a choice. You have liked my song. It's more of an assertion than a question. So there were multiple. Yes, this is a photograph which Gaisberg puts, of Gauhar Jaan in the studio. Now you heard the clip. It was of more than 115 years old clip. It probably doesn't appeal to our technologically, astute ears, which are used to iPods and all of that. But when we actually hear the story of how these artists recorded, it really baffles you. How recording actually took place those days. Those were the times of acoustic recording or mechanical recording, where there were no mics like this to amplify your voice. The singer had to. This was a recording studio. So a makeshift recording studio in a hotel would be set up. The singer had to jump onto a table along with the accompanists, and on the wall, if you see, there's a horn. So inside that horn, this singer had to crane his or her head into it and scream out as loudly as they could. And depending on how loudly you shouted, there was a stylus on the other end which would vibrate and cut etches on the shellac disc. Now, most of the Indian classical musicians, while singing, they just get taken over by the raga pravaha. So, that would spoil the acoustic intensity of the acoustic energy into the horn. So there would be two agents who would hold your hand, one would hold your head and push you inside that and say, bellow hard, bellow hard. So, it was really quite a logistical nightmare for the singer to actually do this, and that's why the high-pitched, the ati tar shanch, if you can reach, that is the pitch at which most of them had to sing these songs, which is so difficult to emote at that pitch. The other constraint that was there were all these early recordings were only of 3 minutes duration. So in that very limited amount of time of 3 minutes, you had to compress something which is so vast and so improvisatory as Indian classical music, where one raga can go on for hours and all through the night you had concerts. Here you had this new technology where in 3 minutes you had to, almost like Pressy writing in literature, give equal amount for everything. So if you actually analyze Gauhar Jaan's recordings too, and she was the first one to record, so she had to create this template as to how to record a khayal in 3 minutes. A little bit of an ala, then the antara, the mukhda, then a little bit of sargam, some tans, whatever possible, a little glimpse of everything, and also leave those 5 to 10 seconds in the end to announce your name. All this with clockwork precision had to be done by the musician. So it was quite a challenging task for them, which she accomplished. And if you also see the range that she recorded, in her illustrious career, she is said to have recorded almost 600 gramophone records in as many as 20 different languages, which included, other than Hindustani and Urdu and all of that, including French and English. There's some song which says, "My love is a little bird that jumps from tree to tree," very suggestively. And there's something in French, something in Tamil, and Carnatic songs. All of this she records because and a range of genres: khayal, thumri, dadra, bhajans, taranas, horis, kachris, tappas. All of this because you were entering a market where you didn't know what the audience reaction was. So you record everything, whatever sells, then that becomes popular. So a lot of genres, like say Drupal, they just started failing because Drupal could not be compressed into that 3-minute capsule. And probably one of the reasons why Drupal fell off the charts was that it could not adapt itself to recording technology. Now, what did this do to her? Her record sold across the country, and she overnight almost became a rock star, and that's why I think the session is also titled India's First Pop Star. And she was, in fact, if there was a page 3 diva of those times, it was Gauhar, and I'll explain why. So many anecdotes around her that are narrated. Around this time, she's become this newly minted star, and all the Maharajas of various riyasats want her to perform in their court. So the Maharaja of Datia once invites her to sing in his court. She is very dismissive. Datia is too small a riyasat, I cannot come and sing there. So she makes an outrageous demand. So thinking that the Maharaja will not, accede to the demand, she says, I want an entire train booked for myself. Only then I will come. And the Maharaja actually books an entire train with 111 people who travel for that one concert, which includes her horses, her bawarchis, Khansama, her students. Her students were called Chavanni Jaan and Duanni Jaan, Duanni and Chavanni. So on two sides they would sit with the Tanpura. All of these people go to Datia. So lots of such apocryphal stories. There's one more which, she was this fair, very, very flamboyant woman who every evening she would love to go on horse rides in her 4-horse driven buggy across Eden Garden in Calcutta. And one evening she's speeding through the thoroughfares of Calcutta, and the Viceroy's cavalcade crosses hers. Now, looking at her appearance and her, goggles and all of that, he thinks she's the queen of some local riyasat, and he doffs his hat in reverence. She also acknowledges him and drives away. And much later, he realizes that she's a common Tawayaf of Calcutta, and she's summoned to the palace, and she's fined as put. And because it was a crime for common Indians to go on these joyrides, it was only for the people of princely states or the British. But the story goes that she continued to pay a fine of 1,000 rupees every day, but went on her joyrides across. if you're earning 3,000 per recording session, you have a lot of money to splurge. So of course the consequences she bore later, as I shall recount. So this was India's first gramophone celebrity. When her cat gave birth to kittens, she threw lavish parties for 1,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees. So lots of such flamboyant stories about her abound. Now the gramophone company also realized that this was a new technology that was making a lot of waves. They were making sales, so they actually started marketing it big time. And Gauhar was the symbol of the gramophone company. These were some of the advertisements which I picked up from the EMI archive in London. If you see, this seems like a scene from a Bengali zamindar family. The man of the house is standing there, the old man is there, the children are there. If you see closely down, there is also a dark-skinned person, maybe the servant of the house. There's also, interestingly, the woman of the house who's standing in front of her father-in-law or so, without even a parda. And right in the center, you have the gramophone with, of course, Nipper the dog, the symbol of the HMV, of his master's voice. So in one picture, so many stereotypes were broken that this new medium is for everybody. Man, woman, old, young, upper class, lower class. So all of you listen to music together. And of course, they also played to our religious sensibilities. So you had this advertisement of the gramophone Saraswati, where your own goddess of learning and music has adapted our gramophone, and you have the horn coming out of the veena. So it's high time you also adapt to this. So it was selling India back to the Indians at a price of 250 rupees per machine. So another interesting point which I discovered was that when recording technology came to India, and that will probably warm the hearts of all the women in this hall, it was actually women who embraced technology and became the first recorded artists of this country almost for 2 decades. The men folk stayed away completely. There were so many superstitions that if you record into that evil English instrument, you will lose your voice, or the gods will be displeased and all of that. So most of the Gharanedar ustads, barring a few, Abdul Karim Khan Sahab and others, most of them stayed away from recording. Largely because, all that screaming and shouting into horns, and they said this 3-minute thing is going to dilute the classicism of music. So most of them stayed away. But across India, north, south, east, west, it was women who recorded, most of them belonging to the Tawayaf and the Devdasi communities. So Gauhar Jaan, you had Malka Jaan of Agra, Zuhrabai of Agra, Janki Bai Allahabad, this lady here. And interestingly, many of these recording agents said most of them came, if you see Janki Bai on the left, bottom left, they came so decked up to these recording sessions thinking it's another mehfil. Whereas the only thing that saw them was actually that black horn. Nobody saw them, but they came almost decked up so much like it was a live concert. You had Mehboob Jaan of Sholapur, Bai Sundrabai of Pune, lots of such names. In the south, you had Bangalore Nagaratnamma, Coimbatore Thai, Dhanakoti of Kanchipuram, Mysore Adi Lakshmi. Names which have completely been erased from the history of Indian music, because like what men would do, they first of course stayed away from recording. They saw that these women were becoming rock stars, they were earning so much money, they had so much to throw money on parties and so on, and then they did what they do best. They came and displaced the women after 2 decades. And a huge campaign was then launched against many of the performing women of the time, which branded all of them as common prostitutes. Whereas actually the Tavaif, that's another story in itself. The social structure of the Tavaif or the Devdasi community shows that all of them were not prostitutes. They had the option of getting into open relationships with patrons for as long as they wanted. But all of this was disregarded. Most of them were, this was known as the anti-notch campaign that was launched across India. And many of these names were willfully thrown away into the dustbins of Indian history. And so to find even reference, even classical musicians, Hindustani and Carnatic, would not even know many of these names, let alone their stories. But their records continue to speak to us. But where are these records also found? Most of them are found in chor bazaars and raddi shops across India, unguarded, uncared for. And that's one part of my introduction said I also established this archive of Indian music, which kind of digitizes and preserves all these voices. We may not know who, Malka Jaan of Agra was. There's so little about her, but there are almost 200 records of her that are still extant. They are speaking to us in their beautiful voice. So at least that can preserve, if not the story of their lives. These were Gauhar's records, which she recorded across various other competing firms like Nicole, Singer, Sundays, the Pathé from France. So India became a very, very fertile ground for these recording agents from across Europe. Germany, France, Britain, all of them started looking at the Indian market as the source of their profitability. And this leftmost picture, if you see, her picture started appearing on matchboxes of those times, and if you see closely, it says made in Austria. So Gauhar Jaan of Calcutta, common Tavaif, her pictures on matchboxes made in Austria. That was the power of the technology that catapulted them from their quotas to almost global mass media. And of course the chutzpah that came with it, which I spoke about. There's another story of how Gandhiji once asked Gauhar to sing for the Congress party and help raise money. Gauhar agrees, but with a condition that Gandhi should be present in the audience. He's very amused by this woman who's putting up conditions for her help to the Congress, which is the Congress. He agrees, but then, on the day of the concert, it's a runaway success. Her tickets sell so much, they almost make something like 24,000 just by the sale of tickets. But he's unable to come. He sends Maulana Shaukat Ali as a representative. And after the concert, when Shaukat Ali comes to collect money, she gives him only 12,000. And he says, where's the remaining amount? He says, Maulana Sahab, your Atma talks about honesty and integrity. By sending you and not coming himself, he has kept only half his promise. So I shall also give you only half the money that. So that was the thing when you gave. People, the bindas kind of an attitude where you gave back to anybody, Gandhi ho, Viceroy ho, Tatya ka Maharaja ho, we don't care. Our art, our hunar, our kala, I think that is what matters more, which is such a liberating phenomenon for an artist to not be tied to all these apron strings of patrons and politicians. She going on some of those, horse rides there, and a great, model for photographs and so on. Lots of pictures taken of her time. And of course, like many Tavaifs, she also fell in love with all the wrong men, who embezzled her funds, came in touch with her only because of her, glory and her money and so on. But of course, she found one true lover in this Gujarati theatre artist called Amrit Keshav Naik, who was in Bombay, who was much married. He was younger than her, but then it was just love at first sight. So she leaves Calcutta, she leaves everything, she moves to Bombay, and both of them have these, there's so many eyewitnesses of how the Mahalakshmi race course in Bombay, they're betting on horses and, screaming and hooting and all of that. So she finally thought, I found the anchor in my life, which I was craving for, the man whom I'd like to live the rest of my life with. But as luck would have it, he was just 32 or so, and in the midst of a theatre rehearsal, he has a massive heart attack and dies. And that shatters her forever. And she goes back to Calcutta. A little clip that I'll play of another song that she popularized, which she and Amrit Keshav Naik actually wrote that Dadra, called Aan Baan Jiya Bhi Lagi. It's in Rag Khara. And she sung it and popularized it. Just play a little bit of track number 2. So after Amrit's death, there's lots of other things that happen in her life, and then she falls in love with this secretary of hers called Abbas, and that proves to be the disaster of her life. He's younger than her, almost 20 years younger or so, and obviously for reasons of money and so on, he's got into a nikah with her and embezzles her funds. She's so distraught that she trusts him blindly, everything, her financial transactions, everything he's doing. And before she realizes, most of her houses have been made into his name, and money has been embezzled out of her coffers and so on. And she's almost reduced to the state of beggary and becomes a pauper, selling her bandishes for 1 rupee per bandish. Someone who was leading a life like that is reduced to this kind of a state. And this was an aging Gauhar sketch made by somebody in 1928, where she's almost at the brink of her life. And that is when the story, her story reaches the ears of the benevolent Maharaja of Mysore, Nalvadi Krishnaraj Wadiyar, who invites her to Mysore as a state guest in 1928. And she's given a little cottage, which she's very unhappy with after living a life like that, and a very paltry pension of 500 rupees per month. Which includes the money to all her accompanist and everything, and she's constantly negotiating. Can you please increase my salary by 5 rupees? Can you not cut income tax? I need this, I need that. And the Maharaja's darbar is so fed up with this woman who's making so many claims, and all the records say denied. In official babudam that is written across these letters. And so she's, by then, there are lots of court cases that she's fighting, which she's having from across the country. There are health-related problems, age-old problems, all that. And finally, on 17 January 1930, she breathes her last at the KR hospital in Mysore, lonely and forlorn, with none by her bedside to shed tears for her. And there's not even a proper cover or a grave where she rests, because I actually went to the Kabristan committee in Mysore to see where the first voice of India rests, and unfortunately there is no marking stone as well. So her story per se probably has, before my book came, of course her story had vanished into thin air, but then she lives through her music, and there are so many songs which contemporary musicians sing, even popular media, like that monsoon wedding song, Ras Ke Bhare Tore Nain, which many people sing in concerts too. Very few people know that this was actually a poem that was penned by Gauhar herself. But then they use it in popular media without any attribution to the author of the song. So like most concerts end with Rag Bhairavi, I thought I'd end with a very small clip, of the track number 4, which is again in Rag Bhairavi, Rasili Matwaliyon ne Jadoo Dala. Thank you so much.
You covered a lot. I'll try to pick pieces from that and try to, maybe we can share some more information. There's no doubt that commercially it was great, and she managed to reach a wide audience. In a sense, you could call it democratization of music. If you could share some how it worked and how it made the smallest person, lowest content.
So
as that picture, the advertisement showed, finally, before I narrated that incident of how Gaisberg saw people hanging from outside to catch a glimpse of her music. So in a Tawayef like Gauhar, who was known as a Deredar Tawayef, the highest order, there was a caste system there also, like everything else in India. There was hierarchies there. So these Deredar Tawayef's concerts, a common person could not go and attend. So that's why the whole problem of the British construction of branding all of them as common prostitutes was sociologically and historically so wrong. So only select people could listen to people like her. But after the coming of recording, one is anybody could sit, so a community would actually buy a gramophone record, and in a chai adda kind of a thing, you sat, you would listen, which is also one of the reasons why many musicians, I think it was Kesarbai Kerkar, who very famously said, my music is not for chai addas, and so I will not record on the gramophone. So there were many purists there also who refused to do this, but then it brought music from the closeted patronage of exploitative patrons, from darbars, from kothas and salons, to the actual houses of common people, and also global mass media, as we saw how their fame spread across the world. And the other point was, there was also a dehumanization of the musician, where Gauhar Jaan or a Tawayef like her is achut in the house. We don't like a Tawayef entering our house, but her music is okay. So so the music and the woman associated with the music are disconnected from each other. What it did to the woman, we all saw, but what it did to the music was phenomenal, because music then became a part of domestic homestay. People from respectable middle class houses, boys and girls, then started taking to music as a profession. And today we have musicians from all classes and communities without that taboo of being a performing artist.
You mentioned that people from regular homes also started taking to music, to things like that. There are a few very interesting things, perhaps I think we should share with the readers here about how she discovered young talent, including Begum Akhtar. But before that, if you could just also briefly touch upon your research methods. I mean, that I think is something which the readers should also know.
Well, that I must say, it was really a Herculean task, because I came across her reference almost by accident. Now, I was working on my first book on the Mysore royal family, and like I mentioned, she died in Mysore. So there in the palace archives, there was one box file of all the visiting musicians who came to the Maharaja's court, And there was just this little booklet sort of a thing about the first gramophone celebrity and half Armenian, half Indian, the first rock star, all just these titles were there. And then there were those letters that she wrote to the Maharaja's government, which I mentioned, please increase my income, cut my income tax and increase my salary and all of that. And then suddenly on an impulse, I said, this is one story that is dying to be told. I think this is really, she spoke to me, I think, from those papers saying my story deserves to be told to the world, and I really didn't know. I actually went silent on the journey back from Mysore, saying, how do I actually do this? Because being a Tawayaf, she had no legal heirs, she had no students. It was literally like looking for a needle in a haystack. So over the next 3 to 4 years, I chased her literally across the length and breadth of India. Azamgarh, Banaras, Darbhanga, Rampur, Calcutta, Bombay, Madras. I also went to Germany and actually caught hold of Gaisberg's family. And Gaisberg's family gave me all those photographs and some of his diaries where he recounts how she interacted with him in the studio, bargained for more remuneration and all that. Went to EMI archives in London. There was a book of Urdu poetry which her mother, Badi Malka Jaan, wrote, which was known as Makhzane Ulfate Mallika, or the treasure trove of Malka Jaan's love, which was not available anywhere in any of the libraries across India, Raza Library in Rampur or any other place. But a copy of that was found again in London in the British Library. So that had about 400, 500 classical, Urdu divans, shairs which Malka Jaan had composed, and also a lot of biographical information about the mother and daughter. So it was literally putting pieces of a jigsaw puzzle together to recreate the story of this lady, also building in the times in which she lived, the kind of social structure in which she operated. So that was the very Herculean task of research and the process that took
place. A little bit on how, although you touched upon that subject, that she did not have any people to whom she left her parent in that sense. And the Tawayafs were always those who had to take what came in their hands in terms of learnings and things like that, because the Gharanas and those stars were very stingy when it came to these things. But at the same time, she never stopped or hesitated to share her knowledge with people and identify people whom she could. So based on that, something also on how Begum Akhtar she discovered at a young age.
Before that, I think you touched a very interesting subject, which most of these. There was a symbiotic relationship between some of the ustads and the Tawayafs. Some of the ustads would come and learn these stories, etc. from the Tawayafs, but they would never acknowledge, that you learned it from them, because that was blasphemous. But at the same time, these people, they did not belong to any gharana as such. So Gauhar herself learned from an eclectic range, Patiala, then even the Kirana Gharana from Abdul Karim Khan Sahab, many others. Now, how they even taught, there is one anecdote which I refer in the book. There's a conversation between Aladia Khan of the Jaipur Gharana and Abdul Karim Khan of the Kirana Gharana. And Abdul Karim Khan's disciple, I forget the name of the Tawayaf, she's singing she's supposed to be known for her exquisite rendering of Bilas Khani Todi, the rag. And Aladia Khan is stunned, and he tells Abdul Karim Khan, if you start teaching women to sing like this, and they sing so much better than us, who will come to see us and listen to our music? So they should just be taught only as much as required for them. So chote thumris, dadras, simple stuff. Even if it is khayal, let it not be very, very elaborate and so on. But then these people were so much more generous. So many of her students, as Indu Bala, the famous Bengali actress who was a student, and in the school when she goes, she sees Begum Akhtar, who is a student there, and she asks her to sing. She was called Pippi. And so she says, "Ek din tum bahut badi kalakar banogi." And similarly, Siddheshwari Devi also in her memoir, she writes how in her growing up days, she was so fascinated by the 78 RPMs of Gauhar, Malka and others. And Fayaz Khan later says, after Gauhar and Malka, the taj of the Thumri queen of India lies on your
head. Speaking of Thumri lies on the head and things like that, a very short comment on how Thumri evolved, and and how from Drupad you moved to Khayal, and from Khayal to maybe Thumri, and how Gauhar is also required to be credited with creating that template which eventually became what it was?
That is a long story of the history of evolution from Khayal to Bharat and so on.
We have a lot of time, but
interaction with the audience. But as I mentioned, I think this whole template that was done of this 3-minute theme. I think was it Shakespeare or someone who said when there's too much foliage, very little substance is there. So while of course it's great skill to elaborate a raga for hours on end, what you can, the nichod, the saransh of that rag that you could present in that 3-minute format, I think that gave the rag bhav in its completeness, entirety, which is what these musicians did. So and others just blindly later copied and followed this formula that Gauhar created. But yeah, they may not be credited for it. And if today Indian musical industry has taken this journey, taken this leap forward, it is thanks to not only Gauhar but all those other women, many of whose names we don't even know, who must be credited for this. Because that morning, if they didn't take the courage to go into that recording studio, jump onto that table and scream their lungs out into that terrible horn, today we would not be speaking on this microphone, and we would not have all these iPods and digital remixing in studios and all of that. So tribute to them.
Two other things that I wanted to talk to you about or ask you for your opinion. One was she did not lack her skeptics. There were people who initially were very much against her, and that included people like Puraskar, who's considered to be the modern, he is the one who created a structure for learning of music now, last 100 years. So, and then eventually they were won over. She was also extremely popular, and some of her compositions are even used today. But how people like Bal Gandharv used it in, I think Marathi Natya Sangeet owes a lot to her. I think if you could shed some light on that.
Yeah. So there's also, forgot to mention that considering we're in Maharashtra, Bal Gandharva and Master Krishna Rao, they were very, very influenced by her music. So many of her compositions, they would actually be, just the tune would be the same, the words would be changed to Marathi. And she's supposed to have got so angry with that once she came all the way to Pune to have a fight with Bal Gandharva, saying how the hell can you do this plagiarism of my song and so on. So, but probably he gave an answer like what Anu Malik would have done. I just got inspired by her music. So I think this whole idea of inspiration also has a history of its own. But I don't know if these Pandits and Ustads actually got won over at all. And as luck could have for them, by the time 1902 was what I was talking, 1925 was when electrical recording came into picture. The microphone comes into picture, and by then this 3-minute capsule is no longer there. Longer format where you could record for 8-9 minutes. So by the time the men actually entered the scene, both the quality of the recording was much better, and also the duration of the recording was longer. So it somehow providentially turned out to be so lucky for them that when they entered, all the dirty work had already been done by these poor women, and they just came and, as I said, captured the space.
Okay. And something about Pandit Mallikarjun Mansur, who probably is remembered more than her. Nobody knows that actually one of his most famous Tupis probably was inspired by her. And something about her lifestyle. You mentioned, like how she used to travel with a whole retinue of people and things like that. She also had this, very hedonistic kind of a lifestyle. Those days, 100 years ago, she used to go around with 2 gun-toting men to this thing. And she actually also used it just to protect her clothes because she felt that, it is so expensive, I don't want it to be stolen. You mentioned the Maharaja of Datia episode, but she was not without her ego, and something about what lessons you can say on life that he gave her, if you could just quickly...
So I didn't have the time to recount the whole Datia episode. So when she does all this, the Maharaja of Datia says this lady needs to be shown her place, and her ego has to be reduced. So he calls her, of course, with all that retinue, the entire train that's called over, but she's never given an opportunity to sing. So she's almost held there captive as a house arrest for several days, and she's waiting every day, when will I get an offer to go and sing?
Yeah.
And very junior musicians are being called, and she's just singing. And someday she's just so frustrated and fed up, and she actually dresses up like a man on her horse, and then tries to go in the morning horse ride. The Maharaja is going. She tries to accost him there, and she just confronts him, saying, "I'm fed up. An artist's main thing is the music. If I'm not allowed to sing, why have you kept me here?" Of course, he gave her the best. Every day she would get presents, she would get the best of food, the best of service, but not given an opportunity to sing. So at that time, he confronts her and says, your true mark is not you as a human being. Your art is what you are valued for. But you decided to, give that a short shrift, and your ego became so much more than your art. I thought, let us subsume that, and only then you will be allowed to sing. So he gives her that very invaluable lesson, after which her, this mad, hedonistic kind of lifestyle and ego is supposed to have come down to quite a bit.
And her success took her to South. She got influenced with Carnatic music. She came in contact with the South Devdasis, and how eventually it also influenced people like Dhanammal and those other.
So many times to South India, so this Ariyakudi Ramanuja Iyengar, the famous Carnatic musician, supposed to have learnt many Krishna bhajans from her. Veena Dhanammal, the famous South Indian musician, she hosted a party for her when she comes to Madras. And there was so much of openness, I think, which today probably we lack, where there's a strict jacket of Hindustani and Carnatic music, where the two shall never talk. Of course, they have jugalbandis and so on, but still the amount of interaction that needs to happen, I don't think happens so much. Whereas those days, you had this free flow, where including you have Siddheshwari Devi and MS Subbulakshmi, how they Siddheshwari would always stay at Subbulakshmi's house in Madras, learn from her, and she would learn from each other. So that symbiosis is so important.
So important, and probably it is what we call fusion today. I think they actually did it in so many years ago and drove the boundaries of the gharanas, so to say. I think we come to a close. I think.
Is there no audience question?
If anybody has any audience, we should. Sorry.
Like the horn. The musician in the horn, when there's no feedback from the other side.
I think we'll throw it open to the audience in case the leaders have any questions. Anyone?
Yeah.
You get a mic. Take the mic. No. Others.
As the author who has brought her to life, how did she come across you? Besides, I understand you'll read. I haven't read the book, I'm sorry as yet, but now I'm going to read it. A flamboyant character. Barring that, how did she grow upon you, or how do you perceive her, the entire person?
For me, what really captivated me about her was her never say die kind of an attitude, which I think many artists need to have. Being an artist myself, I know that creative people can be besotted with a lot of problems many times, and how you actually hold your stead and use your art as the foundation of your life. All those personal travails that I mentioned, the death of Amrit Keshav, the death of her mother, the court cases where she actually had to prove her parentage in court with a upstart who was working as a servant in the house. He goes and makes a claim saying Gauhar was actually a baby born out of wedlock, and I'm the true son. And then she goes looking for her father who had deserted her, and she manages to find him in Allahabad. And imagine what the father says. He says, I will come and depose in court and say you're my daughter if you pay me 10,000 rupees. So you're after all so famous, you're a rich musician. So she says, as a father, you're going to actually ask for money to prove that you're my father. He says, yeah, I have kids of my own who will look after her. They are not as famous as you. So many personal travails, but still the music, the voice, the emotions, and I think all that sorrow and pain, how an artist actually converts pain into creativity. I think that becomes a very important point. And somewhere I think God also chooses those who can sustain that pain and convert it into something creative, only them to be artists. It's not everybody who gets chosen to be one. So in fact, the book is actually, it got adapted to a play by Lilith Dubey, and Mahesh Dattani and I wrote the script for that, and now it's going to become a Bollywood film which Ashutosh Gowarikar is going to be making it. And the whole idea is to ensure that, you know how Bollywood would depict a Tawaif, the whole thing that Mujra is like a modern day dance bar where people are throwing money, and that sort of thing never happened. There was a certain decorum, there was a respect, and that thing is very important to maintain. So I told Ashutosh that whenever we are doing this, not for any other reason, I have to be the period consultant there, and we are not going to trivialize or sensationalize this whole thing. I won't mention, there was another very, very famous producer, director from Bollywood who wanted to make a film, and the whole contract fell through only because he said, "Kuch masala dalna hai isme, let's try and make this angle that actually Gaisberg and she had an affair." And then there'll be, you can have those songs where she goes to London and they stand and like Shah Rukh Khan, sing and all that. But I refuse saying that kind of where my character is not mine, but the character of my subject is compromised. I don't think I would like to do that. So I think it's very important to depict sensitively the story of an artist, particularly a woman.
The name of
the film.
The name of the film.
It is still going to be made. The name is not yet out.
Yes,
So he was busy with Panipat, and after Panipat we are going to start on that. The screenplay has been written, so now the rest of it will follow.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So the question is, during those days, it was more of a Gharana Paddhatis and Gurukuls, and there was a tradition followed from, if you are from Kirana Gharana or from Gwalior. Now, what was the structure there at that point of time? And the second question to this is, structure in the sense from where she really, got her teachings, because, normally you associate yourself to a kind of a Gharanas, right? So, what was the kind of a...
Like I mentioned, people like her and most of the Tawaifs, they never had any one particular Gharana. So she learned from several. So she learned from the Patiala Gharana gurus, Bade Ghulam Ali Khan's uncle, who actually, in fact, that's another story where he also tries to impose himself on her, because it was supposed to be very common. Even Begum Akhtar in her autobiography, she talks about how it was commonplace for the gurus to also make use of their female students if they belong to these communities. Anyway, that is your business, so why not? So, Patiala Gharana, from Abdul Karim Khan she learns, from South India she learns. So, I think these women broke those stereotypes of Gharanas, and that is why, if you see even the range of compositions, there are glimpses of almost all, Gharanas, and that's somehow what music today has become, where the straight jacket of Gharana, I don't think exists to the kind it did maybe 50, 60 years ago.
Anyone else, please? Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
What role did the fact that she belonged to the Derawalis have in her success? And if she had been a lesser Tawaif during that time, would she have been that successful? Like, what role did the class system in that play as to her success in her life?
That's a very good question. But yeah, it did play a very important role, because there also the privilege, the access was available. The first access was available to her, and that's what helped her to break the glass ceiling, so to say. But then slowly with time, I mean, all the other women who recorded, they not necessarily belonged only to this community. So she got the first breakthrough. But then after that, the democratization of music that happened, anybody who had a good voice, and by then the gramophone company too, after 2-3 expeditions that they had, they allowed anybody who was good, commercially, they would be allowed to record. So slowly the net was widened, but the initial, entry point, of course, her class played a very important role. It's a very good question.
Any other question, please? Yes, anyone?
Yeah. Hi, Vikram. Amazing story. Extremely interested and looking forward to read this book. and incredible amount of research that you have done about it. So that's really amazing. One question that I basically have is, you said that you actually thought of this particular book, and it actually came as an accident to you while going to the archives and looking at those documents. Why did you think that this story was relevant in today's time? Was it the persona that you were fascinated, you wanted to write about, or was it the music that you really wanted to talk about?
That's a very introspective question. I've never thought about it. I don't know. It's just the person was so fascinating to me that why did this person, who was such a famous woman, as that little note claimed, why did she die like this, all alone in Mysore? Sometimes something just captures your attention, and this was, I think, one such affliction, so to say. And Junoon, I think it was just Junoon. You just get possessed by the idea, and that was what it was. And slowly, it led to many other things. Like, I said, as a musician myself, I wanted to also analyze her music. So how do you listen to the music? It's not even accessible. Those 78 RPMs are not there. The machine is not there. The needle that runs over it, that is not available. So that set me off on another trail of looking in chor bazaars and radbi shops, getting these records, digitizing them, and putting it up for people. So actually, so that led me to Berlin and other places, and I noticed that almost all parts of Europe have a national sound archive, where not only recordings of their country, but a lot of Indian recordings are also there. Not just of music, but also voices of leaders. Lala Hardayal of the Gadar Party. You had Rabindranath Tagore when he went to Berlin. All this is preserved in Germany, in France, in London, in Vienna. And people there ask me, doesn't India have a national sound archive? And as an Indian, as a student of music and history, I was quite ashamed to say we don't have. And this is where, the only recording of Mahatma Gandhi's voice on a gramophone record, he did radio broadcast, but gramophone record in 1931-32 when he went for the round table conference, someone put this Bhopu in front of him and said, say something. He said, I will not say anything political, so I will talk about my conception of what God is. So there is one record which is called the Spiritual Message of Gandhi. That's what the record is. And can you believe where I found it? I found it in a Chor Bazaar in Chandni Chowk in Delhi, where amidst a heap of other things, this man is sitting with his legs on the records. So it just showed, the father of the nation, so to say, his voice lies subsumed there. And that's the kind of regard we have for our history, our past. We create wars on history, but to document, preserve, we don't have that. Yes. So be the change you want to see, and that's one reason I created this archive. If you actually go to SoundCloud and type Archive of Indian Music, almost 2,000, 3,000 tracks are freely accessible for all of you here. We collected close to 15,000 gramophone records of classical music, folk music, early cinema, the Devika Rani and the Sehgal, that era, Marathi Natya Sangeet, theatre recordings of various languages, speeches of leaders. Now all this is the valuable cultural inheritance of each and every Indian boy and girl, and so it's not my preserve or anybody's preserve. So this has to be made accessible, and with technology, we just had the session on technology. Technology makes everything accessible at the click of a button. So why not our past? Why not our musical heritage? And so this thing is available for people. So those who are interested to listen to more, all the other women that I mentioned, Malka, Godavari, all these people, can go to the archive and actually listen to them.
Anyone else, please?
So this archive came after you started writing?
Yes.
Yes. My other question is, you call her the pop star.
Yeah.
But and you spoke about people having listening to music and chai addas basically. But was that big enough in terms of numbers? I mean, how did people, because owning gramophone would be a big thing.
As I mentioned, so many of the wealthy people, they bought a lot, but even the commoners, they would buy the records. The records were not so costly. It was only the machine. So the machine would be a community shared machine if you could not afford one. But records you could buy. It was a couple of paisa or something. So 50 paisa or 75 paisa per shellac. So that sold because she was listed among the bestsellers of the times by the gramophone EMI magazines as well. So and when actually my PhD is also around that whole thing about the advent of technology and how it impacted Indian classical music, where I actually analyzed what was the profitability of the gramophone company across continents. Luckily for India, around that time you had the outbreak of the war, First World War across Europe. So most of the recording companies, their studios all got bombed in Germany and other places. The mainstay of profitability between the war years was India, and so that's why so much was invested into Asia, India, and the gramophone company still lives on as HMV, Saregama, and all of that. It did matter quite a lot in terms of money, profitability, and all of that.
Thank you, Vikram. I'd like to end this by reading a verse from Badi Malika Jaan's, Fateh Malika, which probably in a sense defines the life and times of, you can say, Gauhar Jaan as well as her mother. In the loneliness of my grave, I opened my eyes and looked around. The mourners had come, cried, given me my ceremonial burial and left. It was when I was left all by myself, far removed from the colors of life, that the real thrust of my miserable existence hit me hard. I mourned my life, while my near and dear ones mourned my death. In the loneliness of my grave, my mourning continued. But wasn't it too late? Thank you so much.
I'm inspired. One more verse that Gauhar herself, I think, penned, which I think sums her life. हम तो किताबों में भी, हम तो मरकर भी रहेंगे जिंदा, गम उन्हीं का है जो मर जाते हैं तो गुजर जाते हैं.
Thank you so much. We come to a close of this session. Many thanks, Vikram. I hand over the proceedings to the Akademi. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for such a beautiful session. On behalf of VLF, we wish to gift you with a book and token of our appreciation for spending some time with us. The gift has been sponsored by Sony OfficeMate, manufacturer and exporter of quality stationery products. The gift kit also contains the book titled When Fate Kicks by P.R. Gajbe, who's our key author today. Can I please request Mrs. P.R. Gajbe to present the hamper?
One more thing, the author would be available. I would request you to be available in case anybody wants to talk to him, discuss anything. He will be available at the lawn downstairs. Thank you. In case somebody wants to have book signed or something. Okay, you can wait here, sir. It's available? Okay, great. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah, okay, fine. Thank you.
Can I also ask Ms. Janvi Pandre, who's painted something for you? Acknowledge and thank our esteemed sponsors and support partners: Headlink Charitable Trust, SMS Care Limited, Western Coalfields Limited, Manganese Ore, India Limited,